Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our public planning hearing for Monday, November 25th, 2024. We have two files this evening, Fraser Fullard and Chris Steele. So I'll call this meeting to order at 5 o'clock and ask if there's any declaration of pecuniary interest. Okay, not seeing anything. This public meeting was called under Section 34 and Section 22 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, concerning two proposed zoning bylaw amendments to the Grey Highlands Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2004-50. Any person or public body is entitled to attend the public meeting and make written or oral submissions in support of or in opposition to any of the proposed amendments. Written comments should be submitted to the planning department. If a specified person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the zoning bylaw is passed, the specified person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council of the municipality of Grey Highlands to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and in addition, they may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. It is important to note that if you wish to be mailed a notice of the passing of the bylaw and/or notice of decision, and you do not live within 120 meters of the subject property, you must provide your request in writing to the planning department of the municipality of Grey Highlands. Registering for this virtual meeting does not represent your written request. A guideline sheet is available upon request. Our first item is agenda item 3.1 and zoning bylaw amendment application number Z40-2024, affecting lands owned by Kenneth James and Marie Emma Bullock and Fraser Thomas August Fullard and Martha Monica Ziolkowski. And the legal description of the subject lands: Part Lot 16, Concession 1, Euphrasia. Part 2, 16R 2879, Grey Highlands. Civic address of 236151 Grey Road 13. The benefiting lot is Part Lot 16, Concession 1, Euphrasia. Part 1, 16R 2879 Grey Highlands, with a civic address of 236157 Grey Road 13. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on the 5th day of November 2024 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. In addition, excuse me, everybody, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear presentations by the applicant or their agent. I believe Ron Davidson's in attendance. There we go. We'll move him over.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ron.
Thank you. I shall be brief with my presentation. So Ron Davidson here. I'm a private planning consultant, and I'm representing the two sets of landowners that are involved with this matter. It's a zoning bylaw amendment, but it pertains to a consent application or a lot line adjustment that was dealt with a couple of weeks ago by the Committee of Adjustment for Grey Highlands. So there's Fred Fullard and his wife Martha Ziolkowski own a property that's 0.5 4.1 hectares in size, and their house is on the property. They also have a shed, and the shed is partly on the neighbor's property, so it straddles the lot line. The neighbor is Ken and Marie Bullock. They own a property that is a bit bigger than Fraser and Martha's property. It's 2.53 hectares of land, and it wraps around the southerly and easterly sides of Fraser and Martha's property. What they'd like to do is straighten out the property to do two things. One, correct the encroachment for the shed, and secondly, just give Martha and Fraser some additional land behind their house. The land behind their house is all forested. There is no agricultural land involved in either of these two properties, despite the fact that the lands are designated agricultural. But there's, like I said, there's no agricultural activity occurring whatsoever. So again, this severance was granted a couple of weeks ago, and now we're dealing with a zoning bylaw amendment that reduces the lot area and frontage requirements. The current lots do not conform to the zoning bylaw, so the reconfigured lots won't as well. I would call it a technicality that we're dealing with really tonight, in terms of reducing the lot area and lot frontage requirements. We're not creating any new lots. We're just shifting around the existing lot lines between two. It's important to note that the lands are designated agricultural in the official plan. So today, if someone tried to create these two lots, if they didn't already exist, it wouldn't happen, because there's a emphasis in the official plan on preserving farmland and keeping the lots as large as possible, to the tune of 40 hectares minimum. And that's in order to keep the farming operations viable. But that ship sailed when these lots were created a number of years ago. Again, they're two small lots. There's no agricultural activity happening whatsoever. And I would go so far as to say, nor will there ever be, because the lands are forested, and I don't think anybody's going to knock down these nice trees to get a couple of extra acres of farmland. Like I said, the idea of farming these lands kind of sailed when that ship sailed when the lots were created several years back. The bottom line is the zoning bylaw amendment does maintain the intent purpose of the official plan. And it is consistent with the provincial policy statement. So there's lots of merit with the application, and hopefully council will see that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, our municipal planner will advise of any comments received and provide an overview and purpose and effect of the bylaw. Planner Pasha.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to go over the purpose and effect as well as the comments. The effect of this bylaw is to amend Schedule A of Zoning Bylaw 2004-50 by rezoning the subject lands from agriculture to rural residential with an exception. Now, the exception that's within the report states that notwithstanding any other provision of the bylaw to the contrary, on lands identified with a 442 exception number, the minimum lot frontage shall be 50 meters. The final draft bylaw will have a different number. The number will be 47 meters as the minimum lot frontage. This is just to it. Right now, if you notice the site plan, it said that the frontage will increase from for Fraser's lot from 45 meters to about 50 meters. Sorry, 47 meters. So 45.7 meters plus 4.57 meters, it'll go to 50 meters. But this is just an approximation. The actual bylaw that goes to council for decision will have a lowered number. That's just to accommodate any inconsistencies in the frontage that we may occur later on. So the actual bylaw will state, notwithstanding any other provision of the bylaw to the contrary, on lands identified with XXX exception number, the minimum lot frontage shall be 47 meters. And that will be applicable to both, the entire area, so both lots. In terms of comments received, Grey County planning staff have stated that county planning staff recognize that the lot addition would ensure that the encroaching shed would be located on the correct property. Therefore, county planning staff would recommend that the lot addition only include the piece of land containing the shed and the row of mature cedar trees. County planning staff recommend that the application be deferred until such a time that the proposed lot addition only includes the piece of land containing the shed and the row of mature cedar trees. GSCA has no concerns with the subject application. Grey Highlands Building Services have stated that they have no concerns in regards to those lot line adjustment as long as the house septic minimum distance setback is maintained. Grey Highlands Environmental Services have stated that they have no comments or concerns. And lastly, Grey Highlands Transportation and Public Spaces Services have stated that any alterations to existing entrance or the parcel benefiting from lot line adjustment will require an entrance permit. No other comments or concerns from transportation and public spaces. And just another clarification, this comment from transportation is a general comment. The road is a county road, and any basically alterations to the entrance to both the properties, they will need to obtain a modified entrance permit from the county transportation staff. That is all.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions from council for our planner or the applicant's agent? Okay, not seeing anything. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or have any questions, please indicate and state your name and address. So on the phone, it's *9 and the raise hand feature on a computer. Is anybody from the public wishing to speak on this file? Okay, we do have 5 people in attendance, but I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand to speak. Any last questions from council? Comments? Okay. As there's no further, oh, sorry, Councillor Allwood.
All right. Thank you, Chair Allen. I just wondered the county's concern about not allowing the additional property to be added at the back of the smaller lot. Are there any concerns that we should have about that, or our planning staff are recommending that we go ahead with this as presented?
See, Ron has indicated he'd like to answer that. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I should have said this earlier, and I forgot. I talked about this a couple weeks ago when we dealt with the severance. I spoke with the county on this matter. I don't want to put words in their mouth. They're not going to die in the sword over this one. I think it's maybe the words that they used. They're not going to appeal it. I think they realize that whether or not the 2 lots remain today as 1.25 hectares, remain as 0.41 hectares and 2.53 hectares, or they're reconfigured to 1.25 and 1.68. How does that pertain to the agricultural designations intent, which is to promote farming? It doesn't matter. I think the comment was, again, I don't want to put words in the county's mouth, but I think that was just something I don't even know how to finish that sentence. They just wanted everybody to understand that we shouldn't be creating agriculture or residential lots in the agricultural designation, and that certainly is not happening. I don't know if Abdullah has a different take on that, but there has been quite a bit of time discussing this matter with the county planner.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, Planner Pasha?
Thank you, Chair. So I can't really give a recommendation during this meeting. What I can give is an interpretation of our official plan policy and the interpretation of the county official plan policy. It's when you're dealing with lot line adjustments, it has to be of a legal or technical reason. Our interpretation of the legal and technical reason, and as per the definition, we believe this is a minor boundary adjustment, which is why municipal staff feel like that interpretation is being met. And in terms of county interpretation, they have the same definition, but they just have a slight variance where they believe that it's not as legal or technical as per their policy.
Okay, thank you for that. Any follow-up, Councillor Allwood?
No, thank you, Chair Allen.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, Mayor McQueen?
Yeah, just following up. I would say, just following up what Ron said, probably the county probably should have said, and like you said, not putting words in their mouth, had this was a new lot, this would not have been, but it's already existing lot line adjustment. You're trying to make things better. So I think that's where I'll leave that. My comments, but I see what Ron is and everyone is saying.
Okay. Manager Payne.
I would just add that this does qualify as a lot addition for a technical reason. And that in this case, what you're looking at is nothing is being, you're not any further away from compliance than you were to begin with. And so, making the two lots roughly the same size does not push you towards further non-compliance. It's really a non-issue. All of those policies that pertain to this type of thing are really intended to prevent new non-farm size lots from being created. And that's not what's happening here.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So, as there's no further discussion, this application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. So I see Ron's up for the next one too, so we'll keep Ron there. Agenda item 3.2 is zoning bylaw amendment application number Z38, 2024, Chris Steele, affecting lands owned by Christopher Patrick and Melanie-Kay Evelyn Steele. Legal description: Part Reserve 2, Plan 20, ARTEMESIA, Part 10, R102, Grey Highlands, has a civic address of 201 Evans Street. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on the 5th day of November 2024 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear presentations by the applicant or their agent. Ron.
Thank you again. I represent now Chris and Melanie Steele. They own this residential lot in Eugenia. And one of the previous, let's start with a little bit of history, and I will keep this short. One of the previous owners of the subject property converted a building, and I think it was a barn at one point, into a residential fourplex. And that happened 44 years ago. And then Chris Steele bought the property about 30 years ago. So the current R zoning on the property doesn't acknowledge a fourplex as a permitted use. But it was thought that this could qualify or should qualify as a legal non-conforming use. And Mr. Steele, before he got me involved, had a legal opinion provided by his lawyer to the municipality, suggesting that this was a legal non-conforming use. Municipal staff wasn't convinced. I guess the argument wasn't compelling enough that this was, in fact, a legal non-conforming use. And therefore, Mr. Steele has decided to go a slightly different route, which was to get me involved and just change the zoning so that it's recognized in black and white as a legal conforming use. So I filed the zoning bylaw amendment application, and the new site-specific zone would in fact allow for a fourplex if it's granted. So now it's really a moot point whether or not the fourplex is legal non-conforming. We don't have to have that discussion if the zoning bylaw amendment is approved. There haven't been any changes, or there are no changes proposed to the property. So the neighbors aren't going to notice anything. And so there really shouldn't be any land use compatibility concerns, not after 40 years. I think the important issue here is whether or not the 4 units can be adequately serviced or have been adequately serviced with regard to sewage treatment, because it's on a private septic system. So on that note, Mr. Steele retained the services of GEI Consultants, which is formerly GM Blue Plan in Sound. And they conducted a nitrate study, and that study determined that the nitrate concentration levels on the site were below the maximum provincial standard, and that the continued use of the existing sewage system should not cause a problem. So that hopefully addresses that in a satisfactory manner. There are no other official plan concerns or issues. I should add that, of course, the official plan strongly encourages rental housing, and that's what we have here for rental units. And the provincial planning statement essentially reads the same way. You got to be able to address servicing issues for the site, and at the same time, the PPS strongly encourages an arrangement of housing types, including rental housing. So there is merit with the applications, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And at this time, I'll go to the municipal planner, who will advise of comments received and provide an overview of the purpose and effect of the bylaw. And I can't see everybody. That's better. Thank you, Planner Pasha.
Thank you, Chair. The effect of this bylaw is to amend Schedule A of the zoning bylaw 2004-50 by rezoning the subject property from residential to residential with the exception 513. The exception 513 will permit the following. On land zoned R513, the subject provisions of section 7.1 of the bylaw 2004-50 that apply to uses within the R zone continue to apply, except where they conflict with the provisions of this section. Where there is a conflict, the provisions of this section shall prevail. Permitted uses will be limited to 1 4-unit residential use is permitted within the building that existed on the date of passing of this bylaw. Buildings and structures accessory to the permitted use. An accessory dwelling unit is not permitted on the subject property. In terms of comments received, Grey County planning staff have stated that provided the sewage loading on site does not increase and that Grey Highlands building staff are satisfied with the nitrate study and are satisfied that the subject property can continue to safely provide on-site water and sewage servicing, county planning staff have no concerns with the subject application. GSCA has stated that they have no objections to the proposal for the described zoning bylaw amendment application. Grey Highlands Building Services have stated that Building Services has received a reviewed the report from Dylan Seeley on the evaluation of the existing septic system to support the fourplex. A building permit to recognize the 2,500-gallon tank installed is in process. Grey Highlands Environmental Services have stated that they have no comments or concerns from environmental services, and Grey Highlands Transportation Services as well as emergency services have stated that they have no comments or concerns. And that is all.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions from council for our planner or the applicant's agent? Councillor Lowhead.
Thank you, Chair Allen. So just to clarify in regards to the septic tank, there's a 2,500-gallon septic tank presently, and it's been inspected. And what are we waiting for from our building department in regards to that septic tank?
Planner Pasha.
Thank you, Chair. So the septic tank, we got a letter from Dylan Seeley, also provided by the applicant, stating that there's a 2,500-gallon tank on the property. However, the issue comes from the records that are available to us for the subject property. The most recent one regarding the septic is that there's a septic permit or a septic repair permit for a 600 to 800-gallon tank on our files, and our records don't show that there is a 2,500-gallon tank on the property. So right now, Mr. Steele is going through the process, a septic permit process that he's applied for, where the building department will go out and confirm. They've confirmed the size of the tanks, but they'll just do the final review of the property to just make sure that what the septic on the property is correct.
So the building department has confirmed that it's 2,500 gallon?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Any follow-up, Councillor Lowhead?
Yeah, just quickly, Chair Allen. So, I mean, if for some reason it were to be determined that it were not a 2,500-gallon tank, that it were, say, smaller as to our previous records, what would the consequences of that be? I mean, would this require then a larger tank be installed?
Planner Pasha?
That would be correct. A larger tank would be required as per the building code because the building code states their specific sizes for the amount of units that are available on any specific property. So a larger tank would be required.
Okay, thank you. No other comments or questions from council members? No? Okay, we'll go to the public. Oh, Councillor Lowhead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Allen. And so we've spoken about this being used as rental accommodation. Is that what it's being used for currently, is long-term rental accommodation? And does this zoning, is it dependent upon this staying as long-term rental accommodation?
Planner Passion.
So in terms of the long-term rental accommodation, that is something that is best answered by the applicant's agent. The zoning right now is being done to bring the use that's currently in the structure into compliance, because there's essentially there's trouble trying to identify whether or not the use is legal non-conforming or not, mainly because the information provided to or that we have available to us is inconsistent, or it isn't getting us to the conclusion as we require. So essentially the whole purpose of the zoning amendment is the existing use currently has a 4-unit apartment structure, which is stated to have been in use for past 40 years. And just to bring that into compliance and make sure it's legally compliant as per our zoning bylaw, we're going through the zoning amendment. So we don't really have any restrictions or requirements for it to be completely long-term rental. Our short-term accommodation bylaw still only permits 1 short-term accommodation per property. So if one of the units was going to be short-term accommodation, that would be permitted as per the STA if they meet all the STA requirements. However, they would most likely be for long-term rental units, essentially.
Thank you for that. Ron, do you want to make any further comments?
No. Well, I'll say this, like my clients are simply trying to sell the property. And what the next guy does with it, I mean, I'm assuming he's going to use it for rental, but like I said, whatever he does, it's regulated by the zoning bylaw, and the bill just clearly stated what can happen. But my understanding is no, the next guy just wants to buy and have 4 rental units.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go to the public now. Any person present wishing to object to or support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or have any questions, please indicate and state your name and address. And so the raise hand feature on the computer, *9 on a phone if you wish to speak on this file. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody indicating they'd like to speak. Any last questions, comments from members of council? Okay, as there's no further discussion, this application will be forwarded to a future council meeting for further consideration. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ron. So I will declare this meeting adjourned at 5:29. Good night, everybody.